Hello everyone, my name is Brendan, and in this video we are going to discuss what multi-factor authentication is, different types of multi-factor authentication, and the NIST 800 and 171 and NIST 853 controls that require multi-factor authentication. Alright, so for starters, what exactly is multi-factor authentication, also known as MFA? So NIST 863, which is titled the Digital Identity Guidelines, defines MFA as an authentication system that requires more than one distinct authentication factor for successful authentication. Multi-factor authentication can be performed using a multi-factor authenticator or by a combination of authenticators that provide different factors. So NIST 863 recognizes three different factors as the foundation of authentication. The three factors are something that you know, and this could be a password or a PIN. The next is something that you have. This means something that you actually possess, that you physically possess, such as a smart card or a proximity card. And finally, something that you are. This refers to some type of biometric data, such as a fingerprint or a retinal scan. Now, in order to achieve MFA, you must use two or more authentication factors to prove your identity. This means that you would not have MFA if you are using a password and a PIN to authenticate to a system, because both the password and the PIN are something that you know. So an example of MFA would actually be someone entering in their password to log into a computer, and then they would need to insert, let's say, a unique smart card into a smart card reader that's connected to their computer. So once this person has provided both authentication types, that password and that smart card, then they would be authorized to access that computer. Okay, so now let's discuss some considerations that you need to be aware of when working with or if you're auditing controls that require MFA. So for a little bit of background, NIST 863 categorizes mobile devices under the term out-of-band devices, and out-of-band devices are considered something that you have. With that being said, NIST 863 specifically calls out the use of public switch telephone networks, or PSTNs, which both SMS text messages and voice phone calls use. Now, back in 2016, NIST actually deprecated the use of SMS and voice phone calls as an authentication method used within MFA. Now, currently, NIST 863 has redacted that statement, and they currently have PSTN verification methods, so SMS and voice calls. They have those set as restricted. This means that they can be used, but it is not recommended, and there will be additional implementations that you'll need to add, and you'll have to undergo a risk assessment to determine if the level of risk is acceptable in order to use that method of authentication. Now, NIST did this because the authentication verifier being used by a system or an application has no way to validate that the initiator or the person actually possesses the phone that the SMS or the voice call is being sent to. Additionally, SMS messages are sent in clear text, allowing them to be susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks, so an adversary would be able to read a one-time password that is potentially being sent over SMS. And in addition to this, NIST 863 also does not allow for VoIP as an authentication method because VoIP does not prove the possession of a specific device or something that you have. Now, with this being said, mobile devices can still be used for MFA and be considered as a something that you have factor. But you will want to use something like an authenticator app that is installed on the mobile device and is configured to your specific identity for the application or system. An example of this would be after entering in your password for, let's say, an application, your authenticator app on your mobile device provides you a one-time password or OTP, and you must enter that one-time password into the application before you're actually authorized to that application. Something else that you should be considering when implementing or assessing MFA is that the authentication methods are always secure. You'll want to ensure that authentication methods such as passwords and tokens are encrypted in transit using FIPS validated algorithms. In addition, you will want to also ensure that the authentication information is replay resistant so that information is protected from replay attacks. Alright, so now that we have a good understanding of what MFA is, let's take a close look at some of the NIST 853 and NIST 800-171 controls that strongly focus on the use of MFA. So both NIST 800-171 and 853 have similar controls that require MFA. In NIST 800-171, we have control 3.5.3, which is use multi-factor authentication for local and network access to privileged accounts and for network access to non-privileged accounts. So this control is requiring that MFA be implemented for all privileged accounts, whether they are accessing the system locally or through the network. And in addition to this, non-privileged accounts, so just a basic user account, they must have MFA when requiring network access to the system. Alright, so I do want to just clarify a couple things with that being said. So local access is any access to an information system by a user or a process acting on behalf of a user that is communicating without the use of a network. And network access is any access by a user or process acting on behalf of a user that is communicating through any type of network connection. This might be the organization's LAN or local area network, or even the internet. Alright, now let's take a look at NIST 853. So in NIST 853, we have control IA2, and there are a couple of enhancements in this control that you can see on the slide. So much like NIST 800-171's 3.5.3, privileged accounts that are accessing the system locally or using network access or remote access will still need MFA. Now, the big difference between control 3.5.3 and this control, IA2's enhancement number 2, is that non-privileged accounts, no matter the type of access, whether it be local, network, or remote, that account is required to use MFA when authenticating. And then we have for IA2 Enhancement 6, which requires that one of the factors of authentication be separate from the system that is gaining access. And the purpose of this control is to reduce the likelihood of compromising the authenticator or the credentials stored on the system. So by implementing one of the factors on a separate device, this provides greater security and an increased level of assurance within the authentication process. Okay, so now both of these controls complement several other controls from NIST 800-171 and NIST 853 that revolve around both network access and remote access specifically. So something to note about remote access is that it is a type of network access that involves communication through external networks such as VPN connections. Remote access sessions, whether it be privileged accounts, non-privileged accounts, or someone accessing the system remotely to perform maintenance, these sessions should always have MFA implemented for them, and that MFA is needed before that account is authorized. On the current slide, you can see several additional controls that MFA applies to for each framework. Now, whether you are implementing MFA for your organization or you're auditing MFA controls, I strongly recommend that you check out NIST 863 in conjunction with the NIST publication that you are working with to ensure that MFA is implemented appropriately for all applicable controls for that framework. Okay, that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. If you would like to see a specific video, please leave your recommendation down in the comments section. Thank you. Have a great day.